It's like your uncle at Thanksgiving. It's had too much to drink. It's just, as soon as it takes off. Welcome to Ready, Set, Drone. Today, we're gonna talk about the DJI AVATA, a FPV quad, Cinewhoop style quad that came out about 2 years ago that is looking to be replaced pretty soon. There's lots of rumors that there's a new version of the AVATA coming out soon. I do not have the new version, so I'm free to talk about this. So let's get started and talk about 8 things that I hope DJI will make different on the next version of the AVATA. So in my opinion, the AVATA was a big improvement over the original DJI FPV for a number of reasons that I've talked about in multiple videos. But with them coming out with a new version, they have the opportunity to get this FPV market really excited and get even more people into the hobby. So one of the first things I think that they could do with the new AVATA is make it even lighter than it is. The original DJI FPV was a heavy beast, and I felt like it was kind of dangerous for new people flying FPV because it was so big, it didn't have ducted props, and it had a lot of inertial mass. So if it was going fast and it hit something, it was going to cause a lot of damage. This one's a lot better because it has guarded props and it isn't quite as big and heavy, but it's still pretty heavy for an FPV quad. And it's mostly in the battery, so you get a long flight time. I personally would be willing to take a little less flight time if this thing were a little bit lighter weight. And another thing about weight is that if they drop the weight but keep the power the same, or even give it a little bit more power, the power to weight ratio on this will be vastly improved. Now this is a Cinewhoop. It's not really designed for freestyle, but people who are getting into FPV want to do some flips and dives and rolls. And while this can sort of do it, it doesn't do it very well. It doesn't have a great power to weight ratio because it's heavy and it's a little underpowered. So dropping the weight and either leaving the power the same or increasing the power slightly would give it a better power to weight ratio and make it a lot more fun to fly, in my opinion. And speaking of performance, the camera on this thing is pretty good, but it doesn't do as well in low light as we would like it to do because it's a smaller sensor than some of their newer drones. Because it's a Cinewhoop, it's primarily designed to fly through tight spaces, inside of buildings. Actually, we've done a lot of fly-throughs with it inside of buildings. And so it should have a bigger sensor so it can pick up more light in low light situations and not look as grainy. So having a bigger sensor on the camera would make it a big improvement over this one. And speaking of camera performance, I would love to see a 5K or 6K native resolution in this thing so that when it does the rock steady or the horizon steady crop in order to stabilize the footage, you can actually still have native real 4K. It's not 4K cropped in so that it looks really grainy and stretched. So if it had a 5K, a 6K, a 7K sensor in it, then your minimum resolution could be 4K even when it's cropped in all the way using horizon steady. It's something that a lot of people, I think, have complained about, how horizon steady looks grainy. That would improve it greatly to have a bigger resolution in this thing. And in terms of user experience, one of the most annoying things about this is where the SD card slot is located. It's located right next to these propellers. You have a little cover for it that sometimes comes loose, and I think that has caused some people's propellers to actually shatter in midair because this thing's loose, they're spinning really fast. There's a very low tolerance there. I would put up with a slightly bigger quad in order to have a space for that SD slot that was a little easier to get to so I could get my card in and out easily. And while we're talking about user experience annoyances, the most annoying thing about the current AVATA, and don't get me wrong, it's a great quad, it does a great job, I love it, but it is so loud. It's like your uncle at Thanksgiving. It's had too much to drink. It's just, as soon as it takes off. You can't really fly it anywhere subtly. I know that DJI can do a better job. They've done it with their other quads, and it doesn't have to sound like your drunk uncle at Thanksgiving. And one more little annoying thing is the way this battery goes in never feels very secure, and we've had multiple times where it wasn't seated properly. We take off, it's way far away, and we start getting errors because the battery is kind of screwing up. So a better way to mount the battery securely would be great. The last thing I would love to see on the new version of the AVATA is kind of a crazy idea, but it's inspired by the Flywoo Cinerace V2, and that is LEDs all around the outside. The Cinerace looks so cool when you fly it with these LEDs around it, and it's fun to chase people. You can fly in darker spaces and get a good line of sight of your quad because you have those things. You should be able to turn them on and off from the remote. That would be easy to do. They wouldn't add a lot of weight. and they would just make it more fun. Some LEDs on the outside. So I hope they can do that. That's probably not high priority, but it would certainly be cool. So there they are, the 8 things that I think DJI should do with the next AVATA. Do you have an opinion? If you do, leave it in the comments below. Let us know what you think DJI should do with the new version of the AVATA and what you'd like to see in the next king of FPV Cinewhoop style quads. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Ready Set Drone!